I think we should hear from our governor, Sam Brownback. Thank you.
Very kind. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you for that very, very kind introduction, and I deeply appreciate it. And unfortunately, I mean, seeing people that were in the 8th grade, and then, and I just turned 60 this year, too, I didn't trip over the line or anything. I wondered what happens when you turn 60, but nothing happens. So I guess that's the good part, right? You don't want anything to happen when you turn 60, but it's just been a great honor to be able to serve you as a state for many, many years, whether it was Secretary of Agriculture before, or in the House, the Senate, or Governor. And now I kind of get to see these things come to fruition. So earlier this week, I was at Fort Riley, dedicating the new Irwin Army Hospital, the new hospital at Fort Riley called Irwin Army Hospital. Brand new facility, $400 million facility, state of the art. And this was something that I did. It was Congresswoman Boyda got it in the House side. We kept it in on the Senate side. It was when you could do line item appropriations that I know a lot of people don't like. But we got that in, and now we got a state-of-the-art hospital there, and that happened back in '08. So you're excited to see that. And then 3 weekends ago, one of the things I was really happy about was I got to be at the opening of the African American Museum of History and Culture that's on the mall. It was my bill that I carried while I was in the United States Senate. And I said back then, we need this as a museum for reconciliation. We need it to really be able to tell the story and to be out there. And we need we need to have reconciliation. And we need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I said that back. We started that bill 14 years ago. That it took that long to get it on through. And I thought, boy, though, what a propitious time for it to come out now, when race relations are just at a difficult point in this country. Although Wichita, I think, really has done some really good work here. I met with your police chief about that and how he had really reached out. And I just thought he did an outstanding job and reached out, and I talked to him and told him about that. Great job. That's what we need to do. We need people talking. We need people working together, and he did it, and they worked together, and it was beautiful. Congratulations on all the great things that are happening in Wichita. Earlier this week, I was down here at the Spirit plant where they rolled off the 500th front-end fuselage, fully stuffed full of all the cool stuff of 787. 500th, got that in a short order, and more to come. And you guys are building it. Increasingly, the world flies on Wichita. Increasingly. You're not just the air capital of the world, you're growing as the air capital of the world. And you got the big players are all here, and they're expanding. Remember, again, I go back a ways. When NIAR started, National Aviation Institute, Research Institute, National Institute of Aviation Research, I'll get it right. We got original appropriation for it, and now it's out at the old Kansas Coliseum, taking the whole place up. Beautiful. And the work that you're doing. Last week, I welcomed Triumph Manufacturing, another aviation group, in their 3rd facility into Kansas. Now, this one's up in the Kansas City area. But you guys are growing as the aviation capital of the world, and this is a great thing. And not that there aren't ups and downs of this business. That's not the right way to put it. Not as there are not highs and lows in this business. But you guys are doing a fantastic job of it. Cargill is staying and building a new facility, and of all the great places where the Wichita Eagle was. They've been such fans of mine that it's hard to stay humble when you get that. I mean, we worked hard with them. I've been up to Minneapolis where their headquarters is. They mostly have most of the headquarters there, but their protein division headquartered here, and we want to see them grow. A global company growing that in the protein space, this is a key issue. Wall Street Journal just recently had a big confab getting together and recognizing the incredible ability of this country and the people and the technology and the industries to feed the world and to fuel the world. We are really good at this stuff. And for a long time, they would never recognize this. They just recognized the person that had the latest gadget, which is fine. But then they start recognizing now, wow, you know, these guys are really good at feeding people all over the world. And why don't we export more food? And we can. And we now got the biggest single build dairy processing plant in the country going up in Garden City, Kansas. $250 million facility. We're one of the fastest growing dairy states in America is this state. Now dairy's low now, but it'll pick back up. These are commodity markets. And that's being built right now in Garden City. And it's an exciting thing to see. So a lot happening. I want to go through just some slides, and I'd be happy to take comments, questions afterwards, of some myth and reality, which I think is a useful thing to do in a political season. Go through, and this is a political season like I've never seen before. And I've been in a number of them, and I just have never seen one like this. This one's just really wild. I do want to admonish you on the presidential race, keep your eye on the ball. This is about the Supreme Court of the United States, okay? This is about the Supreme Court of the United States. And Anthony Scalia, who was a friend of mine and was an amazing jurist, passed away, and who is going to appoint the successor in the Scalia seat and probably a couple of others? And you know how much the court now runs so many things in this country. And do you want Hillary Clinton, who has said she will appoint somebody that is in the pro-choice activist model role in that judicial position? Or do you want somebody like Donald Trump, who has put forward a list that are in the Scalia mold of constitutional lawyers to be in that aren't activist judges but believe in what the Constitution says that's what it should be? Who do you want? And just, I mean, you get all these sidebar issues going on, and they're important too, but at the core of this is the court. Don't forget it, and remind people about that. Because this court's going to make a lot of decisions on religious liberty cases coming up, undoubtedly on a whole series of things. And this is important. So I hope you keep your eye on that issue. Now I want to go through some myths and facts here in the state of Kansas, if I can get this guy to work here right. All right, what are we doing right? All right. Let's start with this. Is that the first one we've got up here? Let me make sure I've got my order right. Yeah. All right, I just want to run through some of these because you may have read about some of these things in the media. I don't know. Saying, okay, well, the tax plan hasn't worked. Okay, so remember what we did. I came in and I said, look, we are not growing as a state. We need to grow. We were, when Bob Dole was first elected, had 6 congressional districts. We're down to 4. We're headed to 3 if we don't start growing. How do you grow? You try to get job creation. You get more jobs stimulated. How do you get more jobs? You lower your income taxes is the key thing that we had that we could do. Because we don't have mountains, what we do this year. Mountains of grain. There's going to be a lot of skiing on mountains of grain this year. We got a lot of grain out there. But we don't have bigger mountains than that. We don't have oceans. But you can look at all the data, and people move where there are lower income taxes, and they move away from higher income taxes. And this is in all the data. So we get people moving to Kansas from California, and we lose people to Texas. Okay? That's in all the data. Now, if you just were doing it off of the better, more pleasant place to live, you would say, I'll move to California and I'll leave Texas. You know, I mean, that's just, but Texas has no income taxes. California has, what are they at, 11 or 12% on their surtax now. And we get people moving into Kansas from California, and we lose a lot of people to Texas. So we said, let's get the income tax down. We were at 6.45. We got to 4.6. And then in all our economic modeling, we said, if you really want to grow and grow jobs, what you want to do is take your tax off of small business, because that's your job creating machine. That's the group that 70% of Kansans work for themselves or somebody with 10 or fewer employees. And if you give them more of their capital back or don't take it from them in the first place, they will invest it back in and they'll create jobs and opportunities. All right? That was the economic modeling. That was the theory that passed in 2012 with a moderate Senate, conservative House. I signed it into law. Now, it wasn't the tax plan I put forward. I put forward actually a flat tax that had the pay-fors in it. That didn't pass in the legislature. But after it passed, they said, you either take this or we're not doing anything. And I said, okay, we'll take it. And I signed it. All right, so tax plan is failing. Well, let's see. What happened on private sector jobs? Okay? Now remember, the public, the media, they'll say, okay, we want to count public and private sector jobs. And I said, our focus has been private sector jobs. Nothing wrong with public sector jobs. We need lots of people in the public sector. We need a lot of teachers. We need, we need a lot of folks in that space. But at state government, we've tried to hold the number of public sector jobs down because you've got to pay taxes to pay for the public sector positions, okay? So we've focused on private sector jobs. We've had strong growth in private sector jobs. We've bounced around. When you hit this line here, we had hit a record number of private sector jobs in the state of Kansas. This is a very good thing. You want a lot of private sector jobs because they pay taxes and they pay into the system, okay? This part has worked. What about small business creation? All right, now this is 2012, 4, 5. Let me make sure, now, so I can just give you a data point here of what we were having on small business. We weren't getting enough small businesses starting in the state of Kansas, okay? Yeah, the first line there is 2003. We were bumping around there at 13, 12,000 new business formation. These are people that file at the Secretary of State's office saying, I've got a corporation, I've got an LLC, this is what I'm doing. After our tax cuts, boom, this thing takes off of new small business filings. We've had a record number of new small businesses start in the state of Kansas for filings at the Secretary of State's office. We're seeing this also in the Department of Revenue. Record numbers. What happened? You cut the taxes. You cut the taxes on small business, you get more small business. Nationwide, we are losing small businesses more than we're gaining them. We're losing it. In Kansas, we're getting more of them here. Why? We have a better small business tax policy than Texas. It's better than Texas. And we're getting people to form, and they're moving in here, and particularly out of Missouri, okay? What we designed the tax plan to do is working. Now, we are having troubles with revenues, okay? We are having real trouble, and we've got a rural recession going on in the state right now. Agriculture commodities are very low. That's my background, is agriculture. Oil and gas is in the pits. Maybe we can get OPEC to them agreeing to stop producing as much, and we're getting a little bit of that bouncing back up. But you can look at the decline in these prices of agriculture and oil. Kansas is one of the most dependent states in America on agriculture and oil, the combination. There are a number of oil states, there are a number of agriculture states. We're both. We're 9th in oil and 6th or 7th in agriculture, okay? And the two together, we're a major agriculture and oil state. That's a good thing. But they're also commodities. They do cycle, I've heard, once in a while. I've experienced it. And corn down 60% since 2012, cattle down 23%. We're actually a bigger cattle state than we are anything else. This has an impact on us. Because, now look at this, and this is what I want to say to you on how this has an impact on us. Our sales tax receipts are growing nicely out of Wichita. Okay? Sales tax receipts. State government's funded primarily 3 places. I mean, it's personal income taxes, corporate income taxes, sales taxes, property taxes. That's 4. And we got severance taxes are in there too. We got a lot of taxes. Anyway, look at this is sales tax receipts this year. And we're seeing an 8.5% growth to the state of Kansas from Sedgwick County of sales tax. Okay? Butler 6.2, Harvey not bad at 4.6. But if you look at the entire region, we're down on sales tax receipts. And you can see the big oil counties, Harper down 25%, Barber down 16%. This is after sales taxes went up. I mean, you've got a rural recession that's taking place. So Wichita Metro growing 8%, sales tax receipts to the state. The remaining region down nearly 3%, down 3%. You got a rural recession taking place, and that's what then we're seeing in our receipts, particularly in sales tax, and then you're seeing a lot of it in property taxes too. So when you see those numbers that we're not hitting on our receipts, it's true. It's primarily sales and corporate. And also remember on corporate taxes here, and I just want to throw this out, I know this is too much data, but you guys get hit with bad stuff all the time. I want you to get a clear picture. We didn't touch corporate income taxes as a state. Didn't touch the whole thing. Left it completely alone, and we're down this year thus far 23% on our corporate tax receipts. Didn't touch it. Left the rate the same. Didn't do anything to it. The one area that we're up slightly, personal income taxes, the one we cut. The one we cut. Supply side has an impact. on some of these things. And I want to keep. All right, second myth. Kansas schools have been cut. The school funding from the state of Kansas, this is the myth, and I just want to show you the chart. This is the latest one in it. My first complete fiscal year that I'm in office. The state funding for K-12 since I've taken office has gone up in total about 10%. State funding from the state has gone up about 10%. Now there's uneven distribution of that. There's places that get more, there's places that get less. There's local property taxes are a big piece of this. But from the state, the amount of money we've put into K-12 is 10% higher today than when I took office. That's just the facts. Now people say, well, wait a minute, it's all pension money that you put into. This is the pension piece of it that we have. I mean, that's up there on top of it. That's the amount the state's putting in on the pension system. And we had a pension system that was in the bankruptcy zone when I came in. Okay? And this is the one that'll really get you. If you're looking at a state or local unit of government, the big one that actually can really eat you is your pension obligation. We made a big reform in 2012. We said new hires after 215 and forward, defined contribution system, and then we started putting more funds into it and more from the employees coming into it, and now we have a solid, solvent pension system in the state of Kansas. We were 49th ranked pension system in the country for solvency. 49th. Thankfully, Illinois was there. We'd been 50th. We're now middle of the pack. I don't know if that's the next one up. Well, here it is. State employee pensions are severely underfunded. You heard that myth too. Okay? Here's where we are. This is the funding ratio of it. From 2012, 54%. It was lower than that. At 61%. Now, and then we bonded $1 billion, which we had bonded money, that's been 20-some plus years ago, about $500 million, and then arbitraging it because we can borrow money cheaper and make money off of the difference. That worked for us before. We've done that again. But even without that, we were 61% funded, now 67% funded. As I say, we're middle of the pack for a pension system that's funded. And you got several legislators here. They've worked on these things. This is important. This isn't really, exciting, I guess, about pension systems. But this is really important that these things be well funded. And now we've gone from 49th to middle of the pack on funding on it. This is really important. Kansas highways are crumbling. You've heard that one out there, okay? The road system's crumbling. Well, there was just a recent report out, like 3 weeks ago, Reason Foundation, that found Kansas highways are the third best in America. Third best highways in America. Oh, and even better, we're tied for first on the best rural highways. That's the best in America. Let me repeat it. That's the best in America on the rural areas. Now, others have invested in these for a long period of time. I don't claim credit for that. We are running, I think, a very good highway program. We've merged the Turnpike into KDOT, so we didn't have 2 highway programs, we have 1. I think that's working really well. We've reduced the number of employees at KDOT and getting that more into highways being built. But this is a great highway system that we've got, and we've continued to maintain that as a great highway system. All right, next myth. Welfare numbers are down because we're kicking people off of welfare. You heard that, and we heard some, some reference to this. Now, this one really, folks, is, maybe I've been around too long. 1996, I'm in the Congress, we passed the first welfare reform, and it was a basic welfare bill that basically just said if you can work, you need to work. And that if you're able-bodied without dependents, you have to either work or take job training. Okay, that's what we said. Now, I think it's mean to keep somebody on welfare if there's a way off. I come from one of the poorest counties in this state, and the worst thing you can do is keep somebody on a pittance from the government. That this is really mean to people. What you need is they need the dignity of being able to be out and working and the opportunity to be out and working. And frankly, too, I think the left is really messed up on these programs. And I think there's a great opportunity for conservatives to remake these programs with the objective being getting people out of poverty. That's our objective, is getting people out of poverty. Okay, so let's see what happened here. We said, we're bringing it back. You got to work if you can work and you don't have any dependents. What happened? Welfare caseloads down 70%. That's not the good news. The good news is within a year of leaving welfare, their incomes had more than doubled. More than doubled, 127%, and we tripled the number of people leaving poverty. Triple the number of people leaving poverty. That's what we want. Get people out of poverty. All right. Myth, vulnerable Kansans aren't being served. All right, so you're just not serving vulnerable Kansans. We did on Medicaid, we took the whole system into managed care. Some of it was managed care before it came in, some of it was fee for service. We took the whole thing into managed care. Now you can see the enrollment increase of numbers of people served in CanCare. That's the new design point. We didn't do the Obama expansion on Medicaid. Didn't do that. And we're still substantially up of people that were, and they're getting better results too. We're getting better results. Now you have caseworkers that work with people and they try to get them into the doctor on regular appointments instead of into the emergency room later on. You want that. You want it in preventative care. You want to take care of people. And that's happening. All right, what about the next myth? Kansans are fleeing to Missouri. Okay? That was the other myth. That everything's just, boy, it's just not working, and so they're leaving, going to Missouri. I'm not going to comment on football. Here's the actual numbers. There are triple the number of people moving from Missouri to Kansas now with the new tax policy. We've tripled the number of people leaving from Missouri, moving to Kansas. And just think about this for just a moment. Just think about this just for a moment, okay? You live in Kansas, let's say you live in Kansas City. So it's 55% Missouri, 45% in Kansas. And your tax rate in Missouri is 6%, and your tax rate in Kansas is 4.6. Or if you're a small business, it's 6% in Missouri and 0 in Kansas. And there's this imaginary line that divides these two cities, City A, City B, and you can move 2 miles and go from 6% income taxes to 0. I don't know. What do you think would happen? What's the? You've seen triple from where we were before the tax cuts, and then this one I like even better. Okay, so for 19 years in a row, before the tax cuts, we were losing wealth from Kansas to Missouri. 19 years in a row. This is adjusted gross income. This is IRS data. Okay, so IRS accumulates all this data. Adjusted gross income is what you pay your income taxes on. And we were seeing for 19 years in a row, Kansans, that's this line, moving to Missouri and moving their wealth, their adjusted gross income, that's what that number is, to Missouri. First year of the tax cuts, boom, other way around. Second year, more coming to Kansas from Missouri. Exactly what you would think it is, really, don't you think? I mean, you create this situation. What do you think would happen in a city like Kansas City? And it tracks. How many of you read this in the Wichita Eagle? It's been a big story. You missed the story? You haven't seen it yet? You haven't seen it all over front page that? Neither have I. Well, yeah. Anyway, that's some of the myths that have been taking place. Those are some of the factual data. We have a big election cycle that's taking place. We have a big presidential election that's taking place. We have the country in the balance, and we've got a lot going on in this state. I want to urge you to be out there, to be active in this election cycle. There can be a lot of things that can drive people away from getting involved in this election cycle. Look, I don't like this, I don't like the news, I don't like the discussion. And this last presidential debate, and I'm one that tracks this stuff, it was hard to watch, I thought. First 15 minutes of that, this is just hard to watch. And I love this country. I love this state. And you know, you get to that point, but you got to stay in. You got to keep fighting.
You got to keep standing up, standing with facts, standing pleasantly, standing truthfully, but you got to keep in there. You got to back these candidates that are running. Get out there with them. The electorate's not happy. They've seen their nationwide, their family income went down for the first 7 years of the Obama administration. They were making less at year 7 of the Obama administration than they were year 1. Median family income. It's bounced up a little bit here this year. You can understand people's anger, but you got to stay involved. And then also, don't lose heart on this. And our Savior's not in politics, okay, either. I mean, there is a motto to this land, and it's not in government we trust, remember? It's not in politics we trust, it's in God we trust. We've got to make sure you remember that. Get involved, stay involved. Things can be difficult, but keep looking up. God bless you all. Thank you.
I did lots of water.
Thank you all. Let me attempt to take questions, comments that people might have.
Governor, I'm a little farmer like you. I've read the paper, you have 120 acres. I have 300 of them, Cloud County. Okay. I saw your grain prices are in the tank.
Yeah.
And we have mountains of grain.
Yep.
So as you tweak the tax plan, would you watch out for the farmer?
Yes, and if I don't, my dad will be after me and my brother will too. But what we do, we look at farmers. The farmers were brought into the overall business tax so that there's no state tax on farm income. Now that's got a two-edged sword to it that most people don't think about. Because they look at that and they go, oh wow, that's great for farmers. Well, farmers have a lot of losses, as do oil people, which you then can carry and put against the rest of your taxes, that if you have other tax income. So actually, in a cycle like this, there are a lot of people that would do better if they were being taxed, if they're farm and oil and ag, and that we would see that reflected on our statewide. But I still think overall policy we're in, so this is a good one for a pro-growth over a long period of time. That's I think the key piece of it is when you track this around the states with lowest or no income tax over time are your fastest, most dependably growing states. That's in the data. But yeah, we'll always watch out for them. What's that?
Yeah, expenses too. Fertilizer, property tax.
Fertilizer, equipment.
Yeah.
My dad was looking at a new combine header. It was just for the header. It was like $100,000 for the header itself. Yeah, a lot of money. I don't know if they're selling any headers right now, though. The equipment sales. One of the things that happens to us in the state too is that ag prices may be down, but that reverberates. So then you're not selling ag equipment. So the equipment deal is not doing as well. And then our ag manufacturers aren't doing as well. And it just really reverberates back through the system. And I know ethanol was controversial to a lot of people and has been over time. Without ethanol, you could be looking at half the price of corn right now. Where ethanol consumes better than a third, I think just under 40% of the corn in this country right now. Taking the carbohydrates and then we feed the protein that's left over. That's why we get a lot of dairy in the state too, is we've got all that corn that we take the carbohydrates, made ethanol out of, take the protein and feed it. A lot of controversy with tax subsidies that got it going, but without it, you might be looking at half the price of corn right now. And I don't know where we'd put it either. We're having trouble figuring out where we're putting this year's crop anyway. I'm sorry, sir.
No problem. Thank you for coming. This is awesome. Your presentation was fabulous as far as information. Have you thought about when the paper or the news comes out with these myths of having a press conference or something and present the facts? I think people would respond very affirmatively to the facts, but all they're getting, or most of what they're getting, is myths and lies.
We present this information regularly. So it's hard to get it out. But the best way to do that then is to get it out through social media. And then I'm doing a lot of talk radio because you can get it out direct through talk radio. And then, but your social media, and a lot of you may or may not be on social media. If you're not, please get on it. If you guys aren't, put some classes together to teach people how to get on social media to push this information out, because there's ways now to get the data and the information out. Malika does an email regularly with factual materials in it that you can then circulate. And if you want to get, Malika, hold your hand up. If you want to get on her email list to get this regular feed of information, happy to give it to you.
Governor, one of the Mythbusters that you put out was about the number of increases in LLCs since the tax changes.
Right. This is all business entities that file with the state. So that'd be LLCs, C Corps, the whole group.
One of the myths that I'd like you to address is that of the S corporations that may not maybe be considered small businesses, but they found the loophole, they took advantage of it, and now they're not paying taxes. First of all, I'd like to know what you have to say about that loophole, and number two, are we going to fix it?
Well, I'm not sure about what you're saying about a loophole. What we did, this is the legislature, myself, when we put the tax plan forward, we say we're going to take everybody's income tax rate down, and that was 70% of the cost of the tax cut, was taking everybody's rate down, and then 30% of the cost was going to zero on all LLC sub-S pass-through income, and that included then farm income within it. We went to zero on all those, and that was intentional. And that was intentional to create then more money back into the system for individuals. I've had a number of businesses that are LLCs or sub-S that say, hey, we took that money and we built a new greenhouse with it. We built an expanded facility with it. And I had a guy tell me about one just last night that they wouldn't have done, or yesterday here in Wichita, putting a paint facility in their business. They wouldn't have done it, wouldn't have had the capital if they had to pay those taxes to the state. And you say, the state has good use for this, and we would do. We'd put it, half of our money goes into K-12. Other place, we've got good places. But also, a lot of times, small business has really good places to put it too. Like in a new paint facility, so they can expand their footprint of companies that they can serve and products that they can sell. So that wasn't a loophole. That was part of the plan to allow that to take place. Now there's current discussion. A lot of people are saying, well, I think that's too generous. I think you ought to cap some of that. I think it ought to be taxed at some rate. And people running for the legislature and others will look at that and they'll decide what they want to do. I want to point out, this is working for as far as bringing businesses into Kansas, and the closer proximity you are to the border, the better. I think we did the Sedgwick County numbers. Do you recall what those are? I don't remember seeing them, of new businesses. What's that?
I can give that to them. I don't have that.
All right. We had those. Wait a minute. Here it is. Yeah, thanks to the tax cut, the Wichita Metro gained over 3,000 new businesses over a 2-year period that had never paid income taxes in the state of Kansas before. So that's our tax data. That's not the Secretary of State's data. That's the Department of Revenue for the state of Kansas got from Wichita 3,000 new businesses. These are new Social Security numbers to us that are filing, and they're probably paying some other taxes, but they're not paying the sub-S or the LLC taxes. And 3,000 of those are in the Wichita area. So, I mean, you've felt it. You do feel it more on border counties, because there it's just a simpler thing to do. Thanks for asking them.
Governor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming.
You bet. Good to see you.
And I appreciate your support for renewable energy, both in Washington and here in Kansas. And you touched on ethanol a bit ago about the importance of the rural economy through grain prices. Where do you see, and I heard you speak at the State Fair at the Kansas Energy Conference recently, where do you see both those industries going in the future for the state economy?
The renewable energy?
Yes.
And what was the
Well, the ethanol and wind primarily.
Ethanol, wind.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think ethanol's pretty well situated. I think you're going to see continued a lot of ethanol production, particularly at low grain prices. You know, it's a two commodity business. You know this better than anybody, but the rest maybe not as much. That the ethanol builds off of the price of corn, price of oil. So if the price of oil is high, price of corn is low, you're producing a lot of ethanol because you're competing against gasoline or the other petroleum-based products. And when corn's up and oil's down, you're doing less. So it's a double cycle to try to watch, which is really hard to maintain. But you got good capacity in this state, and then we've got a system in Kansas that really not many other places have. So we can take the corn, we can make it into ethanol. We feed then the distiller's dried grain wet to cattle because we're a big cattle state. We're number 3 in cattle, and we're one of the fastest growing in dairy. They love the wet grain, and so you can take that wet protein product and feed it to cattle, and then we take the meat or the milk out of it on the other side. And there are very few places that have that integrated of a system that really helps you. This is a sidebar, but it's kind of interesting. We've got a big intermodal facility in Kansas City, just went in the last 3 years. It's really expanded. BNSF put it in there. And one of the big exports we've got out there is distiller's dried grain, which comes out of the ethanol plants, goes into these containers that come over here from Asia full of stuff, and we send it back full of DDGs, which I'd like to put more expensive stuff in there, but I'm glad we're shipping it out. And wind, I think, will continue to do well. Wind has a high production tax credit behind it right now, but that's phased out over time, this is something I've advocated. But we've had $10 billion of wind investment in this state since the start, and most of that during my tenure in office. $10 billion of rural investment. Where 30% of our electricity in this state now is generated by wind, and we could hit 50% before my term in office is done, of our electricity that we generate in this state. There are days, shoulder months, that'd be when we're in now, so this is March, April, October, where the state of Kansas is providing 30% of the power to the entire Southwest power pool, 12 states, when it blows here and you've got those low load months happening. Now that came from the wind industry. Somebody ought to check it out, because if I've gotten that fact wrong, correct me, but I don't doubt it, because you get those turbines flying and it's first in electricity, and then it goes to the entire power pool, the 12-state power pool that we're in now.
Governor, could you comment please on people being worried about Trump? I mean, Hillary allegedly has a 6% lead. We know that's skewed beyond belief. 1/3 of the voters are undecided yet, which makes that 6%. Whatever, could you comment please?
Yeah. Like I started with, this is an election cycle like none other I've ever seen. I've just never seen one like this. I don't think the public wants to vote for Hillary, but then they hear all these other things going on, and they're just kind of torn back and forth. And that's why I keep bringing it back to, this is about the Supreme Court. Because I mean, you need to get it back to what this is really about. And you focus in on it, because what the court does anymore, they decide so many of these issues. And we know the difference of which both of these sides are going to appoint. We know Hillary will appoint liberal justices. She has said it. And we know Trump's going to appoint conservative judges. He's said it, and he's got a bunch of people around him to make sure he does it. Mike Pence is a good friend of mine, governor of Indiana, is a good guy, and recognizes the importance of the judiciary. So I just think you need to keep your eyes on what this is really about. And I don't know how accurate polling is anymore. I mean, if it was accurate, I wouldn't be standing here as governor. And that's just, I mean, and you know, you think about it too. People get beat on about, well, you shouldn't do this or that. So you ask them on a poll, what are you going to do? And they're kind of, I don't know what I'm going to say. So I don't know. I just know you fight through to the end. Last election cycle, thank you for all of you in this room for helping me win re-election. And our folks never gave up and never quit, and they saw those polls on a regular basis, and the national left wanted my hide. And they were after it, and there was a lot of money that came into this state. But our folks never quit. They just every day They just kept pushing. They just kept pushing. I remember a picture election day in 2014. They go to the campaign headquarters, our campaign headquarters, my opponent's campaign headquarters. My opponent, they're kind of having a party and thinking about, man, this is great. We're going to get this done. My guys, they are at the phone. They are calling people. They are dogging people. You got to get out and vote. My mom got 10 calls one day to make sure she would vote. And I'm saying, Mom, why did you answer the phone? And, well, people called me and I answered the phone. But I mean, that was just our folks saying, I see a reliable Republican that hasn't voted yet. They got to vote. We got to vote. We got to vote. And you need to do it this cycle. You need to do it this cycle. And just keep pushing and keep pushing. These things matter. Ground game matters a lot. And talk with people. You may be kind of thinking, well, I don't know that I want to talk to people, or I'm just kind of embarrassed about, you know, what's being said and everything. Talk to people. Remind them what it's about. Remind them the core issues. Remind them what they stand for. And remember, they look to you. They look to you because they think you're a little weird that you're involved in politics. You know, I mean, who does that for sport? But you do, and they know that, and they kid you about it. But they listen to you. You really need to be out talking to people. Yeah.
Hi, Governor. Thank you for coming. I've enjoyed some of the points that you touched on. As I'm approaching my college years, I've noticed that some of the colleges in Kansas, their tuition prices keep going up and going up and going up. And I was just wondering, why is that, and is there anything that can be done to make higher education more affordable? Yeah,
that's a great point. I just got my last child started college this year, and I understand what you're talking about. We've got 5 kids, and first several got nice scholarships, and there's great scholarship programs, and a lot of people have given over time to wonderful scholarships, and that's good. They're great student loan programs, but still the price higher education's continued to escalate. Yeah, there have been different places and people that have worked on things. Here, the legislature at times have looked at putting caps on tuition growth. And then the universities need to operate, and so they pull those back. And over time, the state of Kansas has put less money into the cost of college education. And this has been happening for a number of years, that has. My hope and my intent and my effort has been to keep stable the amount of money that Kansas puts in higher education. That's what we've tried to do. We've been close to that. This last year we had to do a 4% reduction because the money wasn't coming in. The agriculture and the oil economy, as I mentioned, the sales tax weren't coming in. But my effort's going to be to try to maintain that stability to the universities and to the technical schools as much as I possibly can. The other thing I want to urge people to take advantage of, and this is really something that folks ought to do. Now the state of Kansas steps up and we will pay for 100% of technical education while you're in high school. Okay, 100%, because we need more technically trained people. And we've tripled the number of people now taking technical training in the state of Kansas. Half of those are CNAs, certified nurse assistants, but you can get welding, IT, plumbing, you can go down the list. State of Kansas pay for 100% of it while you're in high school. I'm urging people to the degree they can, get one of those and then use it to work part of your way through college. I mean, back when I was in college, it was more affordable that you could work your way through school. And I made money raising pigs on the farm and then working summers and working during college that I could kind of make my way through undergrad, and I had to borrow for law school, but I could make my way through undergrad that way. Now, my parents subsidized my hog raising because they paid for all the feed, so sweet deal. I don't think you could probably get that, and not as many people were on the farm. But you can get technical training to where you can get something more than a minimum wage job. And some of these jobs can pay very nicely. But you know, it's more complicated, but those are doable paths too that the state and others have created. Best to you to go on college.
Thank you, Governor, for your comments on evidence and statistics. I wanted to ask some questions and thank you for your comments on preventive care and avoiding the ERs and just what you caught right now, all the CNAs.
in tech training. Among your statistics, hopefully people could also start seeing Kansas in its development of its medical meccas and all our work that we've done to bring in non-physician providers along the way, nurse practitioners and other primary care providers. I'm curious, as we're facing some stress in the rural areas on the rural hospitals, what could be done to help with salvaging. We lost Independence, and there's talk of 4 more this year or next year in trouble. And could possibly the core that was used for a while be recreated?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We've had, I want to just take it on the rural hospitals and their bigger issue overall. What we did when the monies weren't coming in, we had to do some cuts in the Medicaid. We tried to shelter the rural areas as much as we could under that. And then there is a way forward to restore all of the Medicaid cuts. We can up the provider tax. It's called a provider tax. So this is a tax on hospitals, nursing facilities, and others. We can up that tax, use that for our match at the federal level to continue to bring down the federal money on it's roughly 60-40 match, and make up these provider cuts that we had to do because we didn't have the money coming in. I have proposed that. We'll see if the legislature decides to do that. Some people don't want to do that, and they want to use that money instead to use it for a match to bring down the Obamacare Medicaid match. Remember, this is a different Medicaid program under Obamacare. The Obamacare says that if you're able-bodied without dependents, we will provide you Medicaid on a 90-10 match, and that's the one we haven't done because we've been still working to get everybody covered under the old Medicaid program where you have a disability or a dependent or something like that. So I think we ought to use that increased provider tax to make up for the Medicaid to help the rurals as well. And we're trying to help them as much as possible. It's a tough atmosphere. Independence was a particularly difficult one. I mean, our office worked on that to try to help. It's got a lot of competition in pretty near proximity, which a lot of our rurals don't. But this is going to be an important issue. We got a Rural Health Task Force meeting now that Jeff Collier, the Lieutenant Governor, is heading up. Jeff's a physician. He's from Hayes. He understands those areas. And I think this is a long-term key issue. Legislature will be considering the issue of whether to expand Medicaid for the Obamacare piece of it this next session. And we'll hear and see what people want to do. Thanks for asking.
Question.
Governor, you know, there's books written by Dick Morris and his wife and others about the Clintons and Hillary. And what I don't understand, I don't think the people understand why these people haven't been taken to task. You know, they should really be, if I understand, Benghazi, the emails, everything. What is keeping them from being convicted?
You know, I'm not going to comment on all of Dick Morris's things, but I am on the email and the server issue because I worked I was a White House fellow in the H.W. Bush White House. And I had clearance then, and my boss had clearance. I worked for assistant director of the agency, and he was just manically focused that you cannot treat secret material loosely because this can be penetrated by our enemies. They know how to be able to focus in and get this material if you don't use your communication over secure lines. You have to do this over secure lines or you're jeopardizing the entire information flow. And she took her server out, and that's the one that I look at, and I really couldn't understand that, of why that wasn't treated as a serious breach of information that it is. Because it is. This is Secretary of State's communication that she's getting. There's a lot of top secret information in this. And there's ability by our enemies to get this. And then, you know, the head of the Justice Department says, well, we're not going to prosecute. That's the one that I look at, and I don't understand. And David Petraeus, so
leaked top secret information to somebody else who had top secret information. I'm not saying he should have done it, shouldn't have. He certainly got pursued for that. And that's the one I just really don't understand. You all have been generous with your time. I want to throw one other thought out here. When I was at Fort Riley, a member of the Chaplains Corps was very concerned about what's going to happen in the future of the Chaplains Corps in the military. And I told him, we're going to fight for you. We need the Chaplains Corps in the military. This has been a valuable service, and it's an important thing, and they need to stay. And they need to be able to serve. And we're putting people in harm's way, and there's a lot of difficulty with that. And some of you have been ex-military. I haven't. I've traveled to a number of military bases around the world. I've been in forward bases in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's a scary place. And you need people around. You may have a chaplain from near here that becomes canonized. And Father Capon, we need to fight for these things. These are things that are being assaulted in our country now. And I don't think it's time for us to just say, well, okay, that's just another one, and I'll just kind of keep backing up. I think these are times to fight. God bless you all.
Governor Sam Brownback.